The doorbell rings, and your entire body tenses. Not because you're scared, not because you're hiding from someone. It's something else, something quieter than fear, but louder than preference. You just don't want to answer it. And every single time, a small voice follows. What's wrong with me? Why can't I just go to the door like a normal person? Here's the thing. There might be nothing wrong with you at all. In fact, psychology has a lot to say about what's actually happening. Most people assume that not answering the door is antisocial, lazy, or anxious. But research in personality psychology and neuroscience tells a very different story. You're not broken. You're not being difficult. You may simply be someone whose brain processes social intrusion differently. And that difference has a name, a cause, and honestly, a purpose. That jolt you feel when the doorbell rings, it's not drama, it's not weakness. It's your nervous system responding to an unexpected stimulus, and for some people, that response is significantly stronger than average. Psychologist Elaine Aron has spent decades studying what she calls sensory processing sensitivity, a trait found in roughly 15 to 20% of the population. People with this trait have nervous systems that pick up more information from their environment. They notice subtleties others miss. They process experiences more deeply, and unexpected stimuli, a sudden knock, an unplanned ring, register not as a minor interruption, but as a small system override. Think of it like this. Imagine you're sitting in a softly lit room, reading something you love. Everything is calibrated. The light, the sound, the rhythm of your thoughts. Now someone flicks on fluorescent lights without warning. That's what an unexpected doorbell can feel like to a sensitive nervous system. It's not the door itself, it's the disruption of a carefully maintained internal state. And here's what matters. This isn't something you chose, it's how your brain is wired. Research shows that people with high sensory sensitivity have more active mirror neuron systems and deeper emotional processing. So when your body flinches at the sound of the door, it's not failing you. It's doing exactly what it was built to do. There's a reason your home doesn't feel like just a building to you. It feels like something closer to skin, a boundary between who you are and what the world asks you to be. Environmental psychologist Erwin Altman described this as primary territory, a space so closely tied to your identity that any uninvited entry feels like a personal intrusion, not just a social one. Your home isn't just where you live. For many people, it's where they recover, where they regulate, where they take off the version of themselves they wear in public, and finally, breathe. Picture a deep-sea diver returning to the surface. There's a decompression process. You can't just yank them up without consequences. Your home is that decompression chamber. And when someone rings the bell unannounced, it's like tapping on the glass, mid-process. Now, does this mean you never want to see anyone? Of course not. You're human. You crave connection like everyone else. But there's a difference between connection you've chosen and connection that's been imposed. One fills you up. The other drains a tank you are still trying to refill. So when you hear that bell and your first instinct is to freeze, you're not being antisocial. You're protecting a process. You're guarding a space that does something essential. It gives you back to yourself. Here's something most people never think about. Every time you're pulled out of what you're doing, whether it's reading, cooking, thinking, or simply sitting in silence, your brain doesn't just pause, it scrambles. Researcher Sophie Leroy calls this attention residue. When you switch tasks involuntarily, part of your cognitive processing stays stuck on the previous activity. Your brain is now running two programs at once, the thing you were doing, and the social performance suddenly required at your front door. For people who think deeply and process slowly and thoroughly, this isn't a minor inconvenience. It's genuinely costly. It's like pulling someone out of deep water, mid-dive. They don't just lose their place, they lose the pressure, the rhythm, the depth. A woman named Priya once described it perfectly. She said, "It's not that I don't like people. It's that when I'm finally in my own head, getting pulled out feels like waking up from a dream I can't get back to." That captures something important. The reluctance to answer the door isn't always about who's on the other side. Sometimes, it's about what's happening on yours. And that's not laziness. That's not apathy. That's a brain that values depth, and depth requires uninterrupted time. But here's the twist. It's not always about energy. Sometimes, it's about choice. Psychologists Edward D. and Richard Ryan developed what's known as self-determination theory, and at its core is this idea: human beings have a fundamental psychological need for autonomy. Not independence, not isolation. Autonomy. The feeling that your actions are self-directed, that you have a say in what happens in your own life. When someone shows up at your door unannounced, they've made a decision about your time without consulting you. And for people with a strong autonomy drive, that registers, not as a visit, but as an override. Think of it this way. There's a big difference between choosing to open a window because the air feels good and having someone smash it open from outside. The fresh air is the same, but the experience is completely different. One is chosen, the other is imposed. This is why the same person who ignores the doorbell might happily invite friends over for dinner. It's not a contradiction, it's consistency. They want connection on terms that respect their inner world. And wanting control over access to your own space isn't controlling. It's one of the healthiest psychological instincts a person can have. You're not shutting people out, you're honoring a need that most people are never taught to name. And this is where the guilt comes from. Because somewhere along the way, many of us were taught that availability equals kindness. That a good person always opens the door, always picks up the phone, always says yes. This is learned social obligation, and it runs deep. For some people, it started in childhood. Maybe you grew up in a home where saying "not right now" wasn't safe. Maybe you had a parent who expected you to perform warmth on demand, regardless of what you actually felt. Over time, your nervous system learned a rule: other people's needs come first. Your comfort is negotiable. Psychologists sometimes link this to the fawn response, a survival strategy where a person manages threat not by fighting or fleeing, but by appeasing. And while this response can be adaptive in dangerous environments, it becomes a trap in adult life. You end up answering doors you don't want to open, smiling when you're depleted, saying "come in," when every cell in your body is whispering, "not now." Let's be clear here. This isn't about becoming cold or unreachable. It's about recognizing that the guilt you feel when you don't answer isn't evidence that you've done something wrong. It's the echo of a rule you didn't write. You're allowed to decline access to yourself, without apology, without explanation. So what does it actually look like when someone reclaims their door? Psychologist Julian Rotter introduced the concept of internal locus of control, the belief that you, not external forces, direct the course of your life. People with a strong internal locus don't wait for permission to set boundaries. They understand, sometimes instinctively, that protecting their space is not selfish, it's structural. And reclaiming your door doesn't mean building a wall. It means installing a drawbridge. A wall keeps everything out, permanently. A drawbridge, is selective. It lowers for the people and moments you choose. It rises when you need to gather yourself. It's not rejection, it's rhythm. A man named Tomas described his turning point like this: "I stopped apologizing for not answering, and started noticing how much better I felt on the days I didn't." That's not avoidance. That's data. He listened to his own experience and trusted it. Now, if avoiding the door is part of a larger pattern that's shrinking your world, that's worth paying attention to. If it's paired with deep distress or complete withdrawal, talking to a professional can genuinely help. But for many people, not answering the door is simply the quiet, unglamorous act of choosing yourself. And that choice deserves respect, especially from you. You were never rude for not answering that door. You were never broken for wanting silence. You were just someone whose peace requires a little more protection than most. And that's not a flaw, that's self-awareness. If this helped you see that clearly, leave a like. If you want more videos about the quiet psychology of people like us, subscribe. Your door, your rules.